My name is Jim Ashilevi. I am a writer. Let's leave it at that tonight, because I'm going to talk about writing. I've written novels, I've written plays, I've written poetry, nonfiction, blogs. So it's quite obvious that I like to write, that writing is something that is crucial to me, to my survival, to my mental health. But also, writing is something that gives me pleasure. It's fun. It's the one medium where I feel that I can be myself, I can do whatever I want. I'm not hindered by money constraints. I'm not hindered by what people think I should do or shouldn't do. I just need a pen and a paper and I can fulfill my dream. It's as simple as that. Throughout my career, I've been very interested in what other writers have had to say about writing, about the process of writing, about inspiration, and so forth. And I've also learned a thing or two myself while writing, thanks to writing. And if I had to narrow down the principles of writing into just 3 main points, these would be the 3 most important points anyone who's interested in writing should follow. And if you're not interested in writing per se, I think it's also universal enough to apply to any type of creative work. Rule number 1. If you want to become a writer, you have to write. Now that might seem sort of banal and obvious, but think about that. How many people move through their lives dreaming up ideas, thinking about different stories, different characters, different settings, thinking about what they've been through, analyzing their own experiences and memories. And now, how many people actually sit down to write stories? You see, that's the first sort of drop-off point where it's decided whether a person will become a writer or won't become a writer. So the people who only dream don't become writers, but the people who actually sit down to write might become writers. So that's why writing is the most important thing a writer should do in order to become a writer. Rule number 2 is you have to keep writing. Now again, that might sound very obvious, sort of like why would anyone even feel like this would have to be said? I mean, obviously, if you start a sentence, you also have to finish the sentence. If you start a poem, you also have to finish the poem. If you start a play, you also have to finish the play, right? But it's not that simple, because what happens is, I mean, we're all professionals in the field of dreaming. We all have our own fantasy worlds, which are perfect. Basically, our ideas are perfect. There's nothing wrong with our ideas, and the ideas themselves are already 100% whole. They're finished, they're complete, and they evolve. But while they are evolving, they're still perfect. But what happens when you start writing down your idea is that suddenly you see that the words on the page actually kind of ruin your idea. Your ideas are perfect, but the way you translate your ideas to the page into sentences, it's wrought with difficulties, because you are imperfect as a writer. and language will fail you, and you might be in a bad mood when you write. You might be in a bad setting that sort of distracts you. You're just not talented enough to create something as perfect as your ideas. And that's something that's so horrifying to most people that it's easier for them to just quit, to just leave the work unfinished, just push it aside, and just continue with their lives, and then keep dreaming about that one novel that they are supposed to write one day. So you have to push through this disgusting disappointment, this valley of death, basically. You just have to work through it and finish your sentences. I'll give you an example. I think I was 21 when I had just finished a play that was quite successful. It was my first play that was actually staged in professional theater. And then I thought, okay, I'm ready to write my next play, which will be an era-defining classic that will forever change the way people perceive theater, perceive stories, perceive life, perceive death. It was supposed to be the greatest play of all time. And I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and every time I sat down to write, it was awful. The scenes didn't work. The characters just didn't make any sense to me. I couldn't grasp where the story was headed. I had no idea what I was supposed to do with this material. So I had two options. I could either quit or I could work through it. So I chose option number 2. I worked through it. It took me about a year to write this thing, and when it was finished, it was still so bad that I had to just hide it and keep it in a locked drawer forever. Nobody should ever see this play because it's awful. But what happened is that the next day, I got an idea for another play, and that play ended up being one of the best things I've ever written, but it had nothing to do with the initial idea of the play that was supposed to change the world. The only thing the play did was change me as a writer, and it ended up being one of the most special things, one of the dearest pieces of writing I've ever produced in my life. And I would never have reached this idea if I had not finished this awful play that I spent 1 year on. So that takes us to the third and the last rule or principle, so to speak. Don't wait for inspiration. Work towards inspiration. Now, it might sound kind of counterintuitive in a way. After all, this event is called Inspire'd Stage, right? And I'm here to tell you, don't wait for inspiration. Just get to work. But we have this I think inspiration is kind of we're kind of fooled by the notion of inspiration. We're told that inspiration is something that geniuses basically have constantly, and then they create their genius works of art, right? So they just keep having inspiration after inspiration after inspiration, and then they go through life being wonderful geniuses. But what I've learned is that if you keep writing and you keep going, then you actually create the circumstances for inspiration to arrive. Sure, inspiration can hit you at like 3 a.m. in the night when you wake up suddenly and you have a brilliant idea, and you sit up, take your phone or your notebook and you write a poem in 10 minutes. It's possible. And you feel inspired all the way through. It's possible. But what if you work on something longer? What if you work on something that takes days and weeks and months and years to write? Is it really possible to be inspired for 2 years straight? Like, is it possible to be in this ecstatic sort of enlightened state for days on end for like 3 years straight? It's impossible. So if you wish to actually finish something of substance, something that has weight, has relevance to you personally, that something that's longer than 2 pages, you will just have to keep working towards this. You'll have to keep digging, basically. You'll have to keep digging, and hoping that you'll find the golden nugget. But it's pretty sure that if you keep digging, you'll find the golden nugget. I'll close off my talk with a quote from a writer who got me interested in literature and writing when I was maybe 18 or 19. His name is Chuck Palahniuk. And in an interview for The Guardian, he uttered 2 sentences that would change me as a writer forever. So these are the sentences. I really believe it's the moments we can't talk about that become the rest of our lives. It's the moments we cannot process by telling a story that destroy us in the end. So if you think about that quote, all of us have had experiences, have had traumas, have had epiphanies that we've never ever been able to communicate to other people. And that's something that separates us from other people. And writers, the writer's job is to put into words something that other people are incapable of communicating to each other. And if you find that golden nugget from inside yourself, and you actually sit down to write, you will be creating extraordinary work. And the reason most people don't produce extraordinary work is that they are not willing to dig that deep. But you have that chance. Everybody has that chance. So keep digging.